All right, we'll go ahead and get going here. We're a couple minutes after. It looks like the people coming in have started to slow down. So thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Leonard. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs for ASA. This is the second in a series of webinars that we're hosting on the theme of sustainability and how the sport fishing industry, individual members can be doing more to help the environment, do right by their consumers, their employees, and also the business case for why this can help your bottom line. So we had a sort of introductory webinar about a month ago where Rick Crawford with Merger Strategies, who's been our lead consultant that's done a great job helping ASA dive more into this important topic. Rick walked through the Sustainability Toolkit that we released a little while back that hopefully folks have had a chance to look through, which provided really a great level of information to help familiarize and give some tangible actions that companies can take to get started on this journey. Ultimately, recognizing that this isn't going to be a sort of a quick one and done type of thing, but it will be a journey, and ultimately Rick's here to help us as an association and all of our members kind of navigate through it. So on this webinar, I'll let Rick talk more about it, but we'll start kind of walking through what a sustainability assessment might look like, and put a little bit more context around how companies can start looking at kind of the baseline and how to measure and where to go from here in terms of improving your sustainability. So we'll have several more webinars after this, and then we'll also want to flag Rick will be at ICAST, as I know most, if not all of you will be too, and we'll be giving a lunch and learn seminar there. I think it's Thursday at noon. There's more information on our website, but anyone that's there at ICAST, great opportunity to sort of get the in-person version and maybe more interaction with Rick. I think Rick will be there more than just that lunch and learn, so opportunities to interact with him beyond that. So just quick housekeeping here. We'll try and keep this at no more than an hour. I'll turn it over to Rick here in a minute to walk through his presentation. Hopefully there will be some questions and interaction. If you do have questions, a couple of options. This is supposed to be sort of what your Zoom screen looks like. When we get to the end of Rick's presentation, if you have a question, you can either do the reactions button and then click raise hand, and I'll call on you to ask your question. Or at any point, either during the presentation or towards the end, you can type your question in the chat box and I'll read those aloud. So a couple options if you have questions, but again, we'll hold those to the end. So with that, just give me a second. I will figure out how to get the controls over to Rick and let him take it from here. So Rick, the host controls should be coming your way, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, perfect. Well, appreciate it, Mike, and thanks everyone for being here. Let me try and share my screen here. Are y'all seeing this? Mike, are y'all seeing my screen?
Where it is and how
No.
far.
Nope, nothing yet.
Okay. There it is.
There we go.
Okay, cool. All right. So let me see here. So, all right. So thanks everyone for joining, and thanks for the introduction, Mike. Today we're going to talk about, as part of this toolkit, one of the things that we're including is a sustainability assessment. And so we'll get more into that in a minute, but for those of you who maybe didn't have an opportunity to join the last webinar or watch that on YouTube, on the ASA channel, my name's Rick Crawford. I'm president of Merger Strategies. We're a sustainable business consultancy whose mission is to measure and improve your company's sustainability performance, all while boosting profits. We offer a variety of sustainability consulting services, such as corporate sustainability, so assessments, planning, and reporting, also greenhouse gas management, so measuring your carbon footprint, setting science-based targets, and creating climate action plans. Also waste management services, so everything from zero waste operations to sustainable packaging solutions. And also retailer sustainability compliance. So if you sell to Walmart or REI or a number of other retailers who are now requiring that you submit carbon footprint information and other sustainability related disclosures, we can help you out with that. We're a proud 1% for the Planet member, and we're also climate neutral certified, and I hold the Sustainability Excellent Associate certification through the Green Business Certification Institute. Okay, so today we are talking sustainability assessments. We're gonna do an overview and introduction. There's a lot of different assessments that are available. Then we're gonna zone in on the Emerger Strategies basic sustainability assessment tool. And I'm actually gonna take y'all through and we're gonna complete a sustainability assessment on the call today. So excited to do that. I think one thing I want to mention from the outset that I think is very unique and also an amazing opportunity for ASA and its members is that, you know, every different companies use different assessments and it's confusing and they're not comparable. And I think that one really interesting thing that could come of this as a result is to really gain an understanding of where the sport fishing industry actually is related to sustainability by completing this assessment. So I'm pretty psyched about that. I nerd out on this stuff. So, but I think it's really cool if everyone takes the same assessment and then we can really see, hey, where are we missing the mark? How can we improve as an industry and ultimately protect what we all love in the process? So let's dive in. So just as an overview from last time we covered this, but I think it's important if you're going to take the time to complete an assessment, like why do it, right? Why measure your sustainability performance? And the first is risk mitigation. I mean, you know, this industry is solely dependent upon the health of our fisheries, and there are threats to that, like climate change, habitat degradation, and others. And so you want to make sure that you're managing that risk appropriately for the future health of your business. Employees, you know, they increasingly want to work for companies that align with their values. Your customers, they want to support brands that align with their values. And there's all sorts of stats, and we put stuff in the toolkit that and reports that you can look at some of the statistics of this. But another driver is retailers. I mentioned that briefly earlier, you know, Walmart, Target, REI. Increasingly, more and more retailers are starting to require companies that sell products in their stores to be able to measure their sustainability performance. Sustainability is also, particularly carbon footprint, is becoming more and more regulated. Publicly traded companies being regulated by the SEC are now required to measure and report their scope 1 and 2 greenhouse gas emissions. And in California, depending on the size of the company, I think it starts out with $1 billion or more. You have to measure your scope 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emissions. We won't get into the intricacies of that today, but just know that, you know, there's regulation coming. Another main driver is access to capital. So increasingly, investors are starting to align their portfolios with companies that are measuring their sustainability performance because they are less risky investments. But there's also a very real business case for sustainability. Companies that adopt sustainability and really embed it as a core value to their business have opportunities to drive innovation through things like more sustainable packaging or materials that are better for the environment. They reduce costs, they enhance their brand reputation, increase brand loyalty, and also attract and retain talent. So now we're gonna shift gears here now and talk more about sustainability assessments. And so, a question that I get, I do talks and for other industries and other groups, whether they're small or big businesses, and they all kind of have the same question. Okay, I understand the business case. This sounds great. How am I supposed to measure this? And so you can see here on my screen, this is just an example of different topics that companies are starting to measure when it comes to sustainability. You'll also notice that this is a pretty long list, and this could get confusing pretty quickly. So that's what we're going to simplify today. There are a lot of different sustainability assessment frameworks available. The one that we're going to primarily focus on today is the basic sustainability assessment tool. But there's also the Future Fit Business Benchmark. There's, if you've heard of, I'm sure you've heard of B Corps. They have a B impact assessment. And by the way, all these assessments are free, right? I mean, but the challenge with these is just if you don't live in this world, it's hard to even understand what they're asking for. So there's the purpose of this is to help you understand that there are a lot of resources available. There are a lot of frameworks that are available to measure your sustainability performance. But frankly, that can be a little confusing. So the challenge that most companies face with sustainability is that they're not SME friendly, meaning small to medium enterprise, so 500 employees or less, which is going to be the vast majority of all ASA members, right? And these assessments can have hundreds of questions. They can be very time consuming. And for a company who doesn't have a dedicated sustainability person on staff, it is a big ask to complete these and do it in a way that is actually reflective of your sustainability performance. Most sustainability assessments are unrelated to the Sustainable Development Goals and how what you do impacts those. We'll get into talk briefly about that more later. And then there's always, how much is enough? So how close are we to science-based cause no harm goals? So the goal should be to cause no harm to people or the planet through your business. Some of the other challenges is that they're not scored. So they're just like B Corps are actually scored, but they just get to use the logo, but they actually get a score. But a lot of them don't even have scores, so it's difficult to compare companies. And then you're not getting credit for the other positive things that you're doing in your community or with your business. And so, again, I'll just reemphasize that I do think the opportunity here with ASA is to take everyone through the same assessment, so we're comparing apples to apples and gain a much clearer understanding of where this industry is related to sustainability as well as your individual companies. So the basic sustainability assessment tool, the BSAT, this was actually created by a sustainability pioneer. His name is Bob Willard. He's an author. I listed some of the books and the Sustainability Toolkit that he's written that are great. One of them that stands out to me is the Sustainability Advantage. He's also a leading expert on sustainability reporting frameworks, as well as sustainable procurement. And to just give credibility to this tool that he created is that, he serves on the board for the B Corps Standards Advisory Council, as well as the Future Fit Foundation, and has a whole list of other credentials that make him legitimate for creating a sustainability assessment tool. This tool, it enables any organization to assess your progress towards causing that no harm, as well as your positive impacts to people and the planet. And the tool assesses performance on core sustainability issues that are common in the most popular sustainability reporting frameworks and standards. So I had actually gone through when I started Emergent Strategies in 2016 and went through a similar exercise trying to understand like what were the different tools that were out there or frameworks or reports, whatever they were. There's even some that rank like CDP and the Dow Jones Sustainability Index that you see here on this side. So it's reportings, rankings, it's all these things. And like, so what's common amongst all of them? And I had gone through a similar exercise, and Bob made it way easier. And these are this is part of the basic sustainability assessment tool. And basically, what they discovered was that all of them are asking for information on some level of corporate governance. They're all asking for things related to sustainable procurement, energy, waste, water, greenhouse gas emissions, non-greenhouse gas emissions. Encroachment, they're also asking for things related to your employees, so your impact on them, as well as your community impact. And so it's super helpful because a lot of these different frameworks are talking about the same thing, but they're using different terminology. And so you may have heard things like ESG, that stands for environmental social governance. That's basically the same thing as sustainability. Before that, they called it CSR, corporate social responsibility. So you have these different organizations more or less talking about the same thing with different terminology, which makes it more confusing. So this is what I really love about this tool. It has simplified it all. Here's what's common in all of these and puts it just under the same language and framework so that it's understandable. The tool is SME friendly. It's only 20 questions. It's comprehensive, so it scores on all those sustainability issues we just talked about. It's generic, so it's comparable any size business. So with ASA, whether you're a retailer or you're a manufacturer or you're a distributor, you can use this tool. It's helpful because you actually get a score so that you know, okay, where do I stand? Where do I need to go? Every question that you'll answer is going to provide, will have an immediate impact on your score so you can see how you're doing in real time. It also scores on your contribution to these sustainable development goals, as well as bonuses for positive impacts. So just as a put a finer point on this so that it's helpful if you're a visual learner, is that we look at it in terms of we know that our businesses are interconnected, right, to society and the environment. And so every business has inputs, right? You have materials, you have procured goods and services, you consume energy and water. You also have outputs. So through that process, you're emitting greenhouse gas emissions, you're generating waste, you're potentially encroaching on land and other properties that are environmentally significant. And you also have an impact on your employees and society. And so I think this is just helpful in understanding that this is taking a comprehensive look at your company's sustainability performance on its inputs, outputs, and how you impact your employees and society. So I want to touch on the sustainable development goals. If you're listening and you're going, I think I've heard of those, or the reason that you've heard of this is because there's 17 goals that basically, here are the big challenges that humanity faces, and then we're trying to solve these goals by 2030. And so the way that your company contributes to these is, let's say that you measure and reduce your greenhouse gas emissions, your carbon footprint. Well, then you're contributing to climate action. Let's say that you're paying your employees a living wage. Well, then you're contributing to less poverty and more people are able to feed themselves. So those are just quick examples, but it's important because the world's biggest companies, they're sort of using this as the framework to put around how their businesses are making the world a better place to live and work. And so you're able to do the same thing that the bigger companies are doing by using this tool and getting an understanding of how your company is contributing to these goals. So just a quick note on the scores. They're basically marked as a percentage progress towards do no harm goals for core sustainability issues, and you get bonuses for positive impact. So examples of those are if your company helps others reduce their negative impacts on the environment. So if you sell reusable water bottles, right? And so you're helping people pollute less by using something reusable. Similarly, for well-being, let's say that your company, is partnered with a nonprofit like Feeding America, and through that, you're helping people that are less fortunate put food on the table and feed their families. And so those are things that are outside of just causing no harm. That's actually doing some good, right? That's creating a positive impact. So what we're going to do today, which I'll have to switch screens here so that I can show it on my screen. But if you'd like to actually go through this sustainability assessment tool, you can use the QR code here, or let me see. Will this switch screens? Can y'all see that I'm on my website screen, or is it still on the presentation?
Yeah, we're seeing your website.
Okay. All right, so we're at my website. It's emergerstrategies.com. Up at the top, there's a link that'll say Basic Sustainability Assessment Tool. Click that, and here we are. So what I love about this is that this is going to take about 5 minutes, maybe less. And so this is just a really quick way to use the Basic Sustainability Assessment Tool, and I'll talk about after this, what I'll be providing everyone who completes this. So it's going to ask, does your company measure its energy usage, so electricity and fuel? And the idea is that we want to work towards every organization is using renewable energy, but you scroll down here, click your answer. Okay. Now we're on to water. Does your company measure its water usage? So sustainable organizations do not use water from water-stressed regions and ensure that all discharge water is adequately treated. I'm not going to go through and read the additional information, but that's there for you if you'd like to take a look at that. It just provides more context. So we'll say yes. Waste, does your company measure its waste? So whether it's sent to the landfill, recycled, composted, sustainable organizations want to eliminate all avoidable hazardous and non-hazardous waste, reuse, recycle, or otherwise repurpose any and all remaining forms of waste. So say no on this one. Encroachment. So does your organization avoid marine or terrestrial encroachment or encroachment on culturally sensitive areas? So basically what that means is, our facilities and fixed assets that are owned or controlled by organizations, ensuring that they don't encroach on marine terrestrial ecosystems. So this would be the equivalent of, let's say your company owns a fishing lodge and you decided to build one on top of a coral reef that's being threatened with bleaching. Probably not a good idea. That would be an example of encroachment. Always get questions about that. But it's good to know. So we'll say no. So non-greenhouse gas emissions. So this is, are you measuring any solid, liquid, or gaseous emissions? It's just ensuring that you're taking account and you're accounting for any air pollution, essentially, is what we're talking about here. And we can identify that with a yes or a no. greenhouse gas emissions. So this is a big one, and this is probably deserves its own presentation, because this gets complex, or can get complex, when you're talking about scope 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emissions. But to try and simply explain what that means is that your scope 1 greenhouse gas emissions are going to be emissions related to mobile combustion. So think company owned or controlled vehicles, forklifts, things of that nature. It's also going to be stationary combustion. That would be things like natural gas for your heating in your office. So that's scope 1. Scope 2 is always purchased electricity. So that's the emissions that come from the amount of kilowatt hours of electricity that your business uses. And then scope 3 is everything else. It's your entire value chain emissions. So it's everything upstream from, if you sell fishing rods, and you're talking about the materials that went into it. So the emissions all the way down through your supply chain until it gets to your gate. That's called cradle to gate. And then depending on how far you want to go with it, you can measure emissions that go all the way to the end of the product life cycle, which is getting more into what's called a life cycle assessment, which we're not going to get into today. But that being said, this is becoming increasingly common and regulated, so probably good to familiarize yourself with greenhouse gas emissions. But we'll say that no, we're not doing that currently. So procurement, like one of the ways to improve the environmental performance of your products and packaging is making sure that you have a sustainable procurement policy. So it could be that you decide, hey, we're going to make sure that we incorporate recycled material into our products. It has to be at least 50% recycled material, or whatever it is. I'm making that up, but that is one way to make sure that you're improving your environmental performance, is by creating and completing a sustainable procurement policy. And it helps to align your business with suppliers that are on the same page as you as well. The next one here, employee wages. So does your company measure if it pays its employees a living wage? So if you're not familiar with a living wage, there's a calculator which is located within this. And wherever your company has operations, you can use this MIT calculator. And it will tell you how much it costs to, basically, instead of a minimum wage, it's how much does it actually cost to live there, to be able to provide for your family, to be able to provide health care, a number of different areas that it's measuring. But that's usually something that most companies are not measuring. And I have found, in my experience with my clients, is that once you talk to HR and you figure out what the living wage is, you might find out that, hey, we actually are already doing this. A lot of companies already are, and they don't realize it. So employee health, does your company measure workplace health and safety issues? So this is everything from, OSHA regulated stuff to, hey, what about, our employees' mental health, and what programs do we have for them, as well as physical health, exercise, nutrition, mental well-being. So if you have programs like that or not, it's going to be a yes or no. Employment terms. So does your company provide fair employment terms aligned with human rights? A lot of this, you're legally required to do this, right? It's, no child labor, all of those things, but those are things that you want to make sure that you're obviously doing, but also we'll also want to make sure that your supply chain is doing as well. Employee diversity, equity, and inclusion. So does your company monitor and record DEI statistics? I included an example here. It's some companies have goals for 50% women in senior management, making sure that there's pay equity, things of that nature. And say yes. Ethics. Does your company have an ethics policy to handle community and customer concerns? So it's essentially, we want to make sure that you're obviously behaving ethically and responsibly, and want to ensure that you have policies that ensure that everyone is on the same page and is able to behave in an ethical manner, whether it's within your community or supporting your customers. Okay, so all you have to do is enter your information, click OK. And then submit. So what that is going to do is that is going to send me answers, and let me jump back over here to the presentation. Okay. Mike, y'all can see this still, right? I'm back on the presentation.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So once you hit submit, what I am going to do on my end is go through and actually send y'all an individualized report on what your scores are on all of these different categories. I'll also send y'all what your scores are, percentage progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And I will also send some immediate steps that your company can take to improve your sustainability performance, as well as the spreadsheet version of this assessment, so that you have that, so that you can use, and hopefully you do this annually is what's recommended, so that you can, essentially the way that this assessment works and the way that it's designed, it's simple yes, no questions. Anything that you answer with a no is, there's some steps that you should take that will help create baselines so that you can measure your progress going forward. For me, it's like, in working with my clients, I use this assessment, and it's super helpful because it's simple and it's not crazy complex like some of them can be. It's not too time consuming. And the fact that you get actionable next steps is so important. So what I did, I took some next steps that companies typically need to take, and that's also in the Sustainability Toolkit. If you look at, I forget what it's called within the toolkit, but there's a section where it's like a little guidebook of actions that you can take. That's in there, but I will send you all your own personalized sustainability assessment report. And ultimately, at the end of the day, why are we doing this? We're doing this to protect what we love. I'm sure it's while we're all in this industry. We love to fish. We love spending time on the water with friends and family, and measuring and improving your company's sustainability performance is a way to ensure that we're able to do that indefinitely. So for the benefit of future generations. So I am happy to answer any questions that you have. If you need my direct contact info, here this is, but hopefully, hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Great presentation. Reminder, if folks have questions, you can either type it in the chat box or raise your hand. And I guess while you all are preparing those, I had a couple, Rick, just sort of clarifying questions. So you mentioned early on when you were talking about sort of reasons why, and one of them was about investors particularly paying attention to company sustainability performance. And you mentioned something along the lines of it being a safer investment if you're looking into sustainability. Can you, I guess, elaborate what exactly you mean by safer investment, you mean in terms of less prone to regulatory risk or consumer loyalty? There's probably a lot that goes into it, but I was curious with the terminology you use there.
Yeah, so basically, let's say that a company is looking at several businesses it could be even an acquisition to acquire. And some of them have their sustainability ducks in a row, and they're managing risks appropriately. Part of this, a big part of this is risk mitigation. So if you understand your company's climate change risk, for example, if you truly understand that, then you know where your suppliers are located. What are the extreme weather events that are being caused by climate change, and you understand those risks. You also understand the opportunities associated with that. So there may be a way to partner with someone else. So it's basically, to an investor, they're looking at it and saying, this company clearly understands the risks and opportunities associated with sustainability, therefore making them less risky to invest in because they're not going to have to oversee that. You now see what's called, ESG, environmental social governance. That's more the investment term, is what they throw around. And so a lot of companies are now investors are starting to create portfolios that are companies that would be that perform well when it comes to social and environmental performance, which is sustainability. And so if your brand is aligned with those, again, you're less risky, and you're helping to align with what investors, customers, and your employees want.
Gotcha. Yeah, makes sense. Another question as you were going through it, was sort of thinking from a company standpoint, we've used the term journey a lot. It strikes me that, going through this assessment is obviously a great kind of launching point, getting the baseline down. But I was thinking for a lot of the metrics you're looking at, this is sort of the first step. I mean, and I'm thinking maybe this is an oversimplification, but if you think of like the DEI section, so are you measuring DEI related goals within your company? We'll say you're measuring them and your company's made up entirely of old white guys, and that's all you're doing is just acknowledging, yes, we're a company made up of old white guys, but you don't necessarily have goals, what you're trying to achieve. So I guess, can you kind of talk through within each of those? It's like there's a deeper dive you have to do to sort of understand, and I don't think there's a one size fits all of what should you be moving towards, what are realistic goals, and kind of how do companies go about establishing, beyond what their baseline is, but what are realistic, achievable, to some extent aspirational directions they're trying to go with each of those.
Yeah, so I think in some cases it's just like, hey, this is just the way the business was built, and it's something that we haven't ever considered, and that's the point, is to say, all right, well, if you are going to hire someone, then this now should be in consideration. You should be taking into account diversity, equity, and inclusion in your hiring process going forward. Whereas previously it would have just been, hey, maybe you're just gonna hire more of the same, and that there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you now need to consider this. And I think I can't take credit for this. Someone else, I was talking with them about this, and they told me that they saw some presentation, but it's like, why? It's just like in nature, right? Like biodiversity is better. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, if you think of it in that context, it's better, right? Because you're opening yourself up to new markets and new potential customers, the more diverse that you are. And so I think it's just more of, hey, let's see where you are. If we're not doing anything, hey, you know what? We need to hire I don't know. I'm just making this up, but hey, we need to hire a social media manager, and we're all a bunch of old white dudes. Well, maybe we should hire a female, or add some additional diversity into our company to make it more resilient. Because at the end of the day, more diverse organizations are more resilient.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, so within each of those, it may not be as simple as, here's sort of the cookie cutter goal you need to reach. A lot of it's going to be kind of working within your company and understanding
And,
where you
and,
need to get.
and it's also understanding that, hey, like this, it is a journey, right? Like this, it's about, to me, sustainability is about companies becoming the best version of themselves. And it's similar to a person who strives to be the best possible version of themselves, right? And so there's nothing wrong with not doing some of this. Hey, we got to start somewhere. Well, we don't even know what to measure. Well, it's like, okay, well, now we know what to measure. All right, so now that we know what to measure and what we should be measuring, what are actions that we can take, or can we make this part of our decision-making process, so that it starts to become embedded from the top down within an organization. And the companies that do it effectively, they reap all of the benefits. And, those are the ones that easily make the business case for sustainability.